Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time of day it is from wherever you are. It's myself, Ryan, and Angie will be along shortly, aka the goddess of grain, for our first Ag Markets Blast of the week, where you join Angie and myself for a rapid roundup of the latest pricing, flows, market moving news in agricultural markets. Let's give her a second to join. I tell you what, I can do the legals whilst we're waiting. Nothing discussed on this spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Traders PIQ or PIQ Suite, or indeed the hosts, which is of course Angie, who has just been sent a co-host invitation, so she'll be joining us any second now, and myself, Ryan. So let's wait for the amazing Angie to join us. Morning, Tim. Afternoon, should I say?
I'm here.
Hello, hello, hello.
I hope you all picture me like karate kicking the door down every time we start this, because
Well, that's how I picture you.
yeah, if you don't know me well enough. You must be new here. So that's but yeah, every morning I walk in, ready to party. So
Perfect. Right, off we go.
yeah, did I interrupt the legals or did you get them done?
I've done them. I've done them.
Well, badass. Let's rock and roll.
Exactly.
Welcome back. We're ready to party this week. It'll be nice not to have the whole holiday looming over our head. Everyone was basically in vacation mode last week, and I don't blame them. So kind of 3 points of interest this morning just to kickstart the day. Obviously, the first one, today's letter of the day, and as will be the case probably for the next 4 years, is T. Trump's tough tariff talk. Say that
Oh
5
God,
times
there we
fast.
go.
I feel like
That's
Dr. Seuss now.
that's
But
worth the entry price alone.
so we had some really interesting developments over the weekend. Obviously, we had the 100% tariff threat on the BRICS nations, and if they kind of work to push their way towards de-dollarization, I found that pretty interesting, but not surprising. Like you look at the folks that Trump's surrounding himself with, right, and they're pretty hell bent on keeping the dollar kind of as an important sort of bastion of currency, I guess, for one. But so we had this threat. I really don't think it's that big of a deal, right? Like I don't think the BRICS even mentioned this year. Did we see a big push of
No,
de-dollarization from the BRICS?
this is it. This is it,
Yeah.
right? So this from my one interjection that I'm allowed per episode.
Yes.
Obviously, the main one of concern for us in terms of ag markets would be the B in BRICS, obviously
Yes.
Brazil. But
Yes.
as you said, the BRICS nations themselves have kind of very much backtracked away from this kind of single currency, mainly because
Yes.
they can't agree on anything themselves anyway.
Yeah.
So it does feel like a throwaway comment that Trump's using to kind of just like stamp some authority on the situation, but really it was completely unneeded because no one is
Yeah.
looking.
Like I
I
know
think
you're not.
the only
I know.
people. Sorry, God. Sorry, quickly. Just the only people who
Yeah.
seem to
Yeah.
be pushing for the BRIC single currency are people on Twitter. That seems to be the
Yes.
only people that I've ever
Yes.
seen push for this single currency.
Well, that's just it. And that's the part to me that I think is kind of like, oh, okay, cool, but not really necessary to say,
Yeah,
like, but thank you. It'll be good to maybe kind of cool anyone's jets if they were
yeah,
thinking about doing that. But the other thing that I thought that kind of didn't get as much attention as perhaps the 100% tariffs was Trudeau's unannounced visit to
yes,
Mar-a-Lago on Friday. And the fact that our friend, Trudeau up there, who really has been, kind of vehemently anti-Trump, or at least it kind of has felt like that to me from a vibe sort of
yeah,
standpoint. To kind of join him at Mar-a-Lago in Florida there Friday night and have dinner and talk and all of that. And now you're seeing Canadian officials come out and say, hey, listen, we're going to have a very public, very obvious, very, noticeable sort of campaign to crack down on this immigration,
yeah.
to crack down on this drug trafficking. Now, perhaps that was in the works prior to this whole entire thing. But I think to see, Trudeau come in and be like, hey, like your 25% tariff threat, we're taking it seriously. We're
Yeah.
going to do what we can to make sure that we kind of rectify this situation. And so I do feel like if you see that from Canada, it puts the pressure on Mexico to kind of be like, yeah, you guys are probably right. If you both agree, like if 2 out of 3 agree, it's totally different than if it were Trump and then
Yes.
Trudeau and Shine, so that was a good thing to see over the weekend, I think. And on top of that, Trump's tough tariff talk has pushed a big uptick in Chinese buying of soybeans. Like we saw 1 million metric ton announced last week. Yeah, a big chunk of that was unknown on Friday. Like that was a huge sale. And then to have soybean export sales last week be a marketing year high for
Yeah.
this time of year, also something super noticeable and what we'll want to pay attention to. So I'm already
This is
forming in it.
as we've said before. This is a lot of this is kind of front running the potential tariffs, isn't it? So I think not
Could
just
be, yeah.
in grain markets, we're seeing this on a lot of import export data that we're going to be seeing for the December numbers. We're kind of expecting this to be kind of quite lumpy size going through, and a lot of it is front running. So obviously, the downside of this, it means that if you are following the data, you could see a drop off in January after these orders
Good.
have got out quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Expect for like the elastic band kind of to pull back for the January data potentially. Just one to have on
Potentially.
the radar.
I think potentially is the best and most important caveat to add there, because a lot of people want to push that this big export sales interest, and in soybeans, it's a little bit different because we do have this massive Brazilian crop that's getting ready to come off. But, when you look at wheat and corn, especially, the world physical supply isn't what it was a year ago. And so even if Brazil does manage to produce 130 million metric ton corn crop, like some folks
Yeah.
are starting to discuss, which would be above the USDA's current projections, we can't really touch that in the world market until about May or June. So you still have 4 or 5 months to try to work your way through. And so, yeah, the big question now is, are they front running Trump, or are they doing the business because the US is the most reliable
Yes.
supplier who has the most abundant supply and things are cheap, historically speaking?
Yeah.
So there, you got that. Point two, biofuel confusion. Something we'll be watching this week is whether or not Biden clarifies his 45Z tax credit rules, or we see an extension of the biofuel blenders credit. Soybean oil export sales are 146% already of the USDA's projections. So we're already met and exceeded 2 months into the marketing year. But what will be really kind of crazy or important to watch is that we've had a lot of soybean oil domestic demand that's been idle, or at least these traders are sitting on their hands as they try to figure out what these tax credits look like. If we get clarity that pushes them back into the market, that combination with this really, really stout export program could be pretty explosive in the domestic
Right.
soybean oil market and could give beans some surprising support, though that's something that we'll have to be watching. And the pardon was more important than the nation's millions of farmers having clarity when it comes to biofuel policy. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Right.
swear.
Exactly that. Don't get me started. We're already over time.
All right, we're 6 minutes in. Last point, WTF, what is Russia doing when it comes to exports? Because they're talking about limiting. Last year it was like 29 million metric ton of barley, corn, and wheat. This year they're saying, 11 million metric ton. They're not allowing any barley or corn, so that's just going to be wheat exports. That would be exceptionally tight, but the world end user doesn't seem to give a shit. They're just like, okay, whatever. There's plentiful supply in the southern hemisphere. We're able to access supplies out of the EU. We got supplies in North America we can tap into, and we're really not certain what Egypt is doing either. They had this random sort of new buying group come in, and they announced like the surprise. It wasn't even a tender. It was just like, hey, tell us what you would sell us wheat for, and everyone was like, yeah, get bent, buddy. We don't know you. And so it's kind of a weird sort of thing. Like, what is Russia doing? But what are the world's end users doing too? Because they're happy to kind of sit idle and wait because they feel like supplies are plentiful and that's not going to change. However, what do we see happen as we work our way into the first of the year could be super interesting. And so these are all things that we'll be watching this week, and I'm ready to party. I hope you are
Perfect.
too.
Of course I am. Always.
So
Well, thank you so much for that, Angie. I know we try and keep these under 5 minutes, but I think as long as we're talking about stuff that's relevant, does it matter that we're going over? I don't think it
yeah,
does.
this three
Big
minutes
shout
is
out.
really close
Well,
enough too, right?
this
Yeah.
is it, right? This is it. Big shout out to our friends at StoneX. Not only because I'm going to go and meet one of them in a second. Hopefully, they're going to buy me a beer. So
Right.
I'll let you know how that goes. But to the rest of you, have a great week. I trust you had an amazing Thanksgiving. Those that are in America. Angie, as always, thank you for just being yourself, which is absolutely awesome. And we will tune in and see you tomorrow.
I will be here with bells on. Probably not really because they'd be loud and, whatever. But
Right. See you later.
bye.
Bye bye.